Welcome to episode number 295, where I'm speaking with Ayurvedic Doctor Simmi Chopra about arthritis. And in particular, we're talking about paying attention to our health and well-being in our younger years so that diseases like arthritis do not manifest in the body. And we talk about how to keep the body healthy and prevent these diseases. So please stay tuned. Hi there, I'm your host Colette, and on this podcast I will be sharing the teachings of Ayurveda, yoga, and holistic health practices. Now, if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend checking out the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. Thanks for listening, and now here's a new episode. Hello and welcome back to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. Today, I'm very happy to welcome Ayurvedic Doctor Simmi Chopra. She's graduated from the finest doctor program in the US based on BAM's syllabus with internships in Kerala Ayurvedic hospitals and clinics. Simmi has been practicing in New York City for the past few years at Siddha Ayur. She is a double master's in Biostatistics and Molecular Biology from Rutgers University and JNU, which helps her to understand health problems from both mainstream as well as the Ayurvedic perspective. Simmi, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you, Colette. Pleasure is all mine. I'm looking forward to talking to you about old age, geriatrics, health, and whatever comes in this.
Yes, such an important topic, Simmi, right? And, oftentimes I think we dismiss it, especially when we're younger and we're like, oh, that's decades away. I don't have to worry about that yet. And what I would love to start this conversation off with is I know you're very passionate about geriatric health, and you can tell us what drives that passion, and also talking about why it's really important to pay attention to these health issues and, of course, managing our health in the decades prior. Because obviously what we do in the decades prior has an effect on our longevity and how we age, right?
Totally, Colette. I mean, when we are in our 30s or especially 20s, we think we can rule the world, we can eat anything, we can do whatever lifestyle we choose, we can do it, which is fine at that age. But with time, we will be entering the Vata stage of life, which is after 40, 45 years. And we are not paying attention before. So it's always better to prevent rather than treat. It's easier to prevent than to treat. So if we are able to manage or take care of our health before, it will always be better. So now, and majority of us have some loved one who is elderly, our parents, grandparents. And most of us are noticing how painful that age becomes, either for various reasons, even if they don't have any like a named disease, but there's a lot of degeneration that kicks in. So the last time I was giving this conference at NAMA, it was on geriatrics health. And I was that time I'd become very emotional because my mom, she was in India and in the hospital, and I was here in US. And there's things which are controllable, which we could have avoided. But because we are not taking care of ourselves in our younger age, this is what happens. You get bedridden. Yeah. A lot of problems, like simple things like which get ignored are like urine incontinence or stool incontinence, which is something which people usually don't talk about in old age, how these things get affected and ultimately lead you to be kind of bedridden. I mean, as we know, the lifespan has increased while there's decrease in mortality, but our quality of life has really, gone down. Yeah. So there's so many problems associated with old age, and mainly if, as we are talking about Ayurveda, it's all related to Vata Vyadhi, majority of them, because that's where we are entering.
Right, we're entering into the Vata stage of life.
Yes.
Yeah, I see it with my own mother. And in fact, just before this recording, I called home and my mother has dementia and, she's wheelchair bound now. And it's just so hard to watch. But I
Wow.
can really see how diet and lifestyle has played a major factor in this and how signs over the decades were there.
Yeah.
And, it's like, there could have been preventative steps taken, but we really have to monitor our health and take responsibility for our health, right? As throughout our life. So that, as you say, we're not fighting fires when we get to a disease, that we're managing those subtle signs of imbalance that show up and bringing ourselves back into balance. So disease can't manifest in a healthy body, right?
Totally. I mean, we are healthy, but what's happening inside? What I don't understand with majority of us, we pay attention, we are very mindful, we are very focused on what's happening in the house around, in our car. If there's a slight problem, air conditioner, it's not cooling properly, but we just totally ignore what's happening inside our body. People are either there's constipation happening and they'll totally ignore it. Some aches and pains are happening way before it manifests into some serious problems like arthritis. But they ignore those aches and pains because they think that's okay, that's part of life, which is very sad because it may start as just a slight back pain or slight joint pain, which can ultimately lead to some very serious, maybe RA or osteoarthritis or a gout or any of those kind of problems, or even like numbness. A lot of people have, slight numbness or tingling on on the sole of their feet, and they ignore it. And because it takes time for a disease to manifest, as we know, as you have spoken in your other podcast about Shadkriya Kal, that eventually it the symptoms that you'll see is going to be after a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. And yeah, that was the 6 stages of disease. So that, yes, I've spoken about in detail in the past. And it's really interesting in this disconnection to our health. And you're straddling both worlds, right, of modern medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. And I think that in the West in particular, we have been so disconnected from our own healthcare. And I think that's an issue with then not being an active participant in our own healing. Now, through Ayurveda and other holistic health systems, we're learning to take charge of our health. But I think that is the issue. It's like our disconnection to nature is our disconnection to our own home, our own natural home, our body.
Yes, totally. You said it really perfect. That we are getting disconnected with ourselves.
Yeah. And so our goal, right, in Ayurveda is to connect people to their health and to give them the tools to manage their own health and to feel confident and empower people to take charge of their health. And today we're going to talk about arthritis, which is a disease that's very common in our elder years. And so what I'd love to start with here, Simmi, is arthritis can manifest in many forms. You already mentioned some of the typical symptoms of arthritis. Could you just delve a little deeper into that and what forms that arthritis can manifest in?
Totally. So arthritis, if we just look at the word arthritis, it's derived from the Greek word arthron, which is joint, and itis, we all know that is inflammation. But it's a little misleading because in osteoarthritis, majority of the time, it's degeneration. And in another rheumatoid arthritis, there's more inflammation. So, but if we are just looking at arthritis, majority of the what we see is there's inflammation or swelling, pain in the joints, or there could be some degeneration. Now, if we are just looking at the joint capsule, so it's like a bubble-like structure, and there's an outer fibrous layer, and then there's a softer inside layer, which is called synovium, and inside is the synovial fluid. It's a viscous synovial fluid, which keeps the joints lubricated, so that, when we are moving, the cartilage is, it reduces the friction on the cartilage. Now, there are different types of arthritis because in the mainstream medicine, we give names to different problems, health conditions. So if we look at it from the mainstream point, there are these two common arthritis forms. They're very two different. One is osteoarthritis, one is rheumatoid. And in osteoarthritis, as I mentioned, there's more degeneration, while in because of the wear and tear of the cartilage over time or overuse of it, and this cartilage starts to break down. And even the synovial fluid that I mentioned, the viscosity starts decreasing in osteoarthritis. Now, when we are looking at RA, which is rheumatoid arthritis, that it becomes an autoimmune disease where there's inflammation, and the cartilage, our own body starts attacking the cartilage. Mm-hmm. It starts considering it as a foreign substance. Now, there are other arthritis forms also. There's gout, where it is usually starts from the majority of your big toe starts showing the first sign of it. While there are a few ways you can kind of differentiate. In RA, it usually starts from the smaller joints, where the fingers meet the hand. That would be the first joint which would be affected, and the toes meeting the foot, that joint could be affected. While in gout, it would be the big toe itself starts affecting, and then in RA, all the joints slowly start getting affected, and it's both the sides. While in osteoarthritis, it's mainly the bigger joints. That's first thing that you'll start noticing the problems there. So these are 2-3 different kind of the big ones. And then there are also arthritis associated with lupus or psoriasis. So these are different diseases, but they can also eventually lead to arthritis.
And so what is the samprapti, or the progression of arthritis in the body? We can see, as you just explained, that it manifests in different forms, but what is the samprapti of the disease? And maybe if you could also take us through how, depending on what doshas are imbalanced, how the disease can manifest differently.
Sure. So if we are looking at it from the Ayurvedic perspective, and we are looking at osteoarthritis in RA, osteoarthritis can be compared to Sandhigat Vata, where it's basically Kevala Vata. Only Vata is mainly the driving force, the driving dosha, which has been vitiated. And versus in RA, it's Ama Vata. So we can compare it to Ama Vata, which is beautifully given in one of the books, Chakradatta. So as I mentioned, in osteoarthritis, it's Kevala Vata, only Vata. And we all, as you have done a lot of videos on the podcast, on the nidanas for Vata. So the samprapti for osteoarthritis is basically where your nidanas are Vata aggravating foods. The ruksha, laghu, shita gunas are more aggravated.
Right. So the dry, cold gunas qualities, they're aggravated in the body, leading to the Vata aggravation. Yeah.
Right. And so which causes the degeneration. Mm-hmm. Now, if we are looking at a general samprapti, how Vata can get aggravated, in Ayurveda, there are only 2 ways. One is the Kshaya route, which is the degeneration route, which we discussed for osteoarthritis. And then there's the Stambhana route, how Vata can get aggravated. Only 2 ways Vata Vyadhi can happen. Mm-hmm. So the Stambhana is the obstruction, which happens in RA, where there's usually it's the nidanas, there's overnourishment, santarpana, where they are having heavy, sticky, fried foods, and then they could be immediately doing a lot of Vata aggravating like exercise, and which causes now in this RA, the Ama and Vata, they start moving towards the Ama along with Vata, they start going to the Kapha sthanas, which are the Amashya, which is the gut, the Sandhi, which are the joints. And these Ama, the Vata, they are entering through the channels, different channels, and vitiating it and causing a distress in the body channels. And why is that? Because of the unctuous nature of the Ama Rasa. Because now Rasa and Ama, Rasa Dhatu is also affected with the Ama. So now here, three things are happening. Ama and Vata is going to the joint, and the Ama having the similar qualities to the Shlesha Kapha, which are present in the joint. So, which starts giving all the symptoms of the heaviness, the pain, the swelling, and slowly the body does not recognize the Ama in the joints, which is why the immune reaction people start facing in RA. Now, the second thing is that's happening simultaneously is the Rasa. Ama Rasa has been formed. The Rasa Dhatu has been affected. So, which is why they are, and if you look at Rasa Dhatu, what is the root of Rasa Dhatu? It's heart, and which is also gets affected in RA. So it's so beautifully, you can go back to the root once you know, just looking at what's happening, assessing the rogi, the patient, you'll know what's happening, and you can trace it back, and you can pinpoint why the heart is affected, why the gut is affected, because in RA, all these things get affected.
Absolutely. Thank you for breaking that down. That was so great. And I'm just doing a series at the moment of podcasts on the shrotas or the channels. So this ties in perfectly that you're giving all this information. So essentially it starts with Ama, toxins being formed from undigested food. And this creates some obstruction, as you said, in the body. And then Vata cannot move freely in the proper direction, correct?
Totally.
Right. And so that aggravates Vata, and Vata is moving in different channels. And then you have the Ama moving as well in the body, and that finds some weak area, whether that's, an old injury, some weak tissues from an old injury, or genetic weakness, or some other weakness in the body, and the Ama will settle in that area. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, as you said, then Rasa, the first tissue of the body, which I've covered in detail about the nutrition of the dhatus for those out there who are listening, I'll put a link in the show notes. But Rasa is the first tissue. So of course, then if Rasa is affected, and as you said, the heart is affected, and then all the other tissues of the body will become affected too, right? Because Rasa is the first tissue in the nutrition of the dhatus. So then all the other tissues that are formed under Rasa will be affected also.
Yes.
Right. So we can see that progression of disease there, and how, you talked earlier about the subtle symptoms. Of course, we have indigestion to start with, like digestive problems, elimination problems.
Yes. So numbness, usually if a person is feeling numbness on the, let's say, sole of the feet and all, again, as you are mentioning, there's a kaveguna, where the weak spot. So there's vata involvement, as well as there's a kapha involvement in numbness. So there's a avarna, which the kapha is masking the vata. So that you will feel that heaviness. That's why that numbness feeling is there. And again, all boils down to to the food that you're eating, the wrong, incompatible food, and leading to mandagani. So if we really want to focus, so we really want to make our agni, which is the digestive strength, we want to strengthen it so that we are able to, one is digest the food, and of course we have to pay attention to the right kind of food that we are eating according to our to what's happening, what is imbalanced in us.
Exactly. And so this is the core of Ayurveda. We always come back to the digestive fire, the Agni, and making sure that our Agni is working efficiently and we have good strength, and making sure that our Agni is not manda, slow, or tikshna, too sharp. And that's really what we want to instill in people, right? Is making sure that we have the correct diet for our needs, like you said, in regards to our current imbalance or our constitution, and the correct seasonal diet, and making sure that we're living in tune with the circadian rhythms. And that's why we started this episode off by talking about the importance of paying attention throughout our life to our health. Like what we do day in, day out affects our health, right, Simmi?
Yes, totally. I mean, prevention, if we can prevent all this by just taking care of ourselves, be in tune with nature, do the dinacharyas, ritucharyas, right ahara vihara, and you will be able to manage your life much better. And then, especially for old age, there's another beautiful thing that what Ayurveda can offer is the rasayanas. So there are different rasayanas, which are these herbs or formulations which are specific for different tissues, which will strengthen, which will rejuvenate your system, which is going to be very helpful in your, of course, old age.
Yeah, absolutely. And that lubrication of the body and taking care of the tissues and calming the nervous system, because as you mentioned earlier, we're going into the Vata stage of life. So no matter what our constitution, we will be affected by Vata in the wisdom stage of life, as we call it.
Yes.
Yes.
I like the wisdom stage is much better than saying, oh, we are getting old.
I know it is, right? And it's really, I do see a shift in even the Western culture talking about elderhood and the benefits of elderhood and so on, and how, especially that we're living longer and we have a whole nother lifetime now, in our elder years. And that's why we want to make sure we take care of our health throughout our life so we can have that vitality and longevity, as we continue on our path, our life path. And so we know that obviously Ayurvedic treatment is going to be very different depending on the type of arthritis you have and how it manifests in your body. And it's obviously tailored to each individual. But with that understanding, can you share with us some general Ayurvedic treatment for arthritis?
Yeah,
as an Ayurvedic doctor, where would you start with the rogi?
Okay. So the first, if we are looking at the general, the way the chikitsa, the treatment works is, one is we have to first see the stage of the samprapti, the vyadhi avastha, where we are at that stage. So, and the second is we have to then break the samprapti, where the person is, and then treat it at that level.
Right. So you're looking, sorry to interrupt, but you're looking at which stage in the 6 stages of disease it is.
Exactly.
Right.
Let's say they've come in when it's just started, when they are these people are more aware of their bodies. So as soon as let's say a little pain starts, or even just gut related problems has started, constipation, they've come at that stage. So we can just start that by doing Agni Dipana and Ama Pachana if the Ama has already formed. So there are few steps one has to take. Agni Dipana is basically increasing your digestive strength. And then Ama Pachana is any toxins, any undigested food that is not because of your Mandagni, it's not being digested properly, to remove that, to digest those amas. So that is just a normal, basic way to start any chikitsa. Now, if we are, let's try to relate it to the arthritis that we were talking about. So now here in osteoarthritis, because it's the degenerative, we are going to, if there's no ama, or if there was ama, we have treated it, we are doing Agni, Dipana, Ama Pachana, and then we are going to do more Brahmana approach. Because here it's Keval Vata, only Vata is involved. So Vata is drying. So we want to do the opposite quality. So we are going to introduce more nourishing and the Brahmana approach. So
strengthening,
yes, or only even internally as well as externally. So here we can do therapies like Januvasti with that's putting oil in a dam, with making a dam with pouring oil like Mahanarayan oil, all the nourishing oils which are going to be nourishing as well as help you in the pain management and pacifying the Vata.
Yeah, and I'm just going to explain that treatment. I think we have talked about it before, but it is amazing. You make, basically, for those people who are not familiar with the Vata treatment, you're making a dough, and you're making it like you said, a well or a dam, and then you're putting the oil in the dam. So it's sitting on whatever area of the body needs to be healed, or the tissue needs to be healed.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Amazing therapy. Yes.
Amazing, yeah.
So osteoarthritis, here we are doing the Brahmana approach. Now, when it comes to RA, which is, as we saw, even the samprapti was quite elaborated. There were a lot of everything eventually starts getting affected. So first of all, we have to take care of the ama, and not just internally, but externally. If you notice people who have RA, any swelling, and they start applying oil on their knees, let's say it's a knee joint that's been affected, the pain is going to get aggravated. So this shows that there's ama there. So that's the first sign which you can consider. So what you need is drying. You need to remove that ama externally also. So there are amazing therapies like dhanya amla or just dashmula decoction. You can pour that on top of your knees. So that helps remove ama. You can do drying therapies like sand bolus. Again, sand will help digest the ama. So you have to do simultaneously external therapies as well as internal. So internal,
Right.
again, is Agni Deepana, Ama Pachana, take care of the Vata, pacify the doshas. But externally also you have to do these. You cannot straight away start applying oil on these swollen joints, especially where RA is concerned. And because ama is being digested, we want to remove that ama out of a system. So we can do laghu virechana, like small mini virechana, you can say. Every 3 days, we can do a small virechana with eranda telam, which is like castor oil.
Castor oil, yeah. Yes. So you want to do a light purgation because obviously a big purgation would be too aggravating for the vata.
Yes. Totally.
Right.
And for that, of course, you need the whole panchakarma. That's like a 6 weeks program. So, but if you're doing the treatment does involve increasing the digestive strength, removing the ama. For that, removing the ama, we first digest the ama and then remove it. So internally and externally also we do these therapies. First try to digest the ama with the dhanya amla or the dashmula decoction or even just triphala decoction. You can start pouring and then doing the dry heat with sand bolus or which will kind of remove it. And then, of course, do the purgation, which will remove it.
This is the fascinating, Ayurveda obviously is fascinating. It's all fascinating, but the therapies are amazing. And what types of therapies and Simmi's talking about here about dashamula, which is like 10 different herbs that are boiled down to a decoction and then poured over the area. The sand bolus then it's mixed with other ingredients to help with that area. And the whole process is avoiding, as you said, oil application with RA, with rheumatoid arthritis, especially while you're working on the ama internally and digesting that ama in these different diseases.
I would like to add one thing because the listeners they could start doing these therapies maybe at home, because few things you can do at home. If there's pitta involvement, which you can figure it out, if there's burning, there's redness, then the heat, if you're going to apply heat externally, it's going to aggravate it. So that means, there's a pitta involvement, so which is usually there in gout or psoriatic arthritis or even lupus. So you have to be a little careful even while doing therapies.
Yes, indeed. And as you said, you'll know if pitta is involved because the joint will also be warm to the touch. So it's really important to get tailored information to you, right? There's so many factors that come into play when an Ayurvedic practitioner is putting together a program for you. It's really detailed to your needs. So it's really important to get that professional advice, right, Simmi?
Yes, you couldn't have said it better, because these days you see people, Google is there. They'll Google a name, a disease, and they'll start overuse of these herbs, and then they'll have a lot of side effects, or because they are not suiting their body. So another dosha could start getting aggravated, and ultimately they start blaming Ayurveda, that Ayurveda is not the right science. So
yes, exactly. And yeah, there's so many factors involved, and that it takes, an Ayurvedic professional to really explain to you what's happening in your body and to give you that education, and then to make sure that the treatment is tailored to your needs. I'm going to jump in here to tell you some very exciting news. I'm finally hosting a Ayurveda rejuvenation retreat in Bali with Dr. Sujata from Amrita Siddhi Ayurvedic Clinic. That's where I worked from 2014 to 2015. And finally, after all these years of talking about it, we're going to do a retreat together. The dates are December 4th to 10th, 2023. It's an all-inclusive retreat. You'll get consultations, Ayurvedic medicines, treatments, Ayurvedic food, and you'll be in this beautiful healing cocoon of Amrita Siddhi Ayurvedic Clinic. You can check out the video and all the details on my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. Just click on the link in the show notes or visit my website and click on the events tab. And I hope to see you in Bali in December. If someone out there has just been diagnosed with arthritis or, that they're feeling maybe some of these early symptoms, is there any tips that you can give them today to help them?
Sure. I mean, one is, don't be disheartened. There is hope. One is, you can start incorporating a few changes, which I'll suggest, but eventually find a good Ayurvedic practitioner, because there's a lot Ayurveda can do. But for people out, you can start with, stop the vata aggravating food, raw cold, the salads, the raw salads, the cold smoothies, that can be avoided. Of course, the general white sugar, white flour, processed foods, those are, of course, big no. But for a person who's been diagnosed with RA, for them, there are a few food items which generally we can recommend that they should stop eating is yogurt and then seafood, because they both have this slimy and warm taste, a vipaka, which is after it gets digested. So they will aggravate the RA. Though yogurt does feel cool when we eat, but the after digestion, the post digestion is different. So to avoid those. And then, as I mentioned before, if there is swelling already there's a heaviness in your body, then do not apply oil. It's, your first instinct is this pain, let's apply some oil, but that's going to further worsen the condition. And of course, if it's warm to touch, then there's a Pitta element. So try to avoid heating it. And then if we know it's a RA, a problem, then one approach is for Ama Pachana is fasting. Langana, we call it. Fasting initially is a very good way of removing Ama. Not to a great deal, but there will be some amount of Ama that can be digested and removed. So a few of these tips one can do at home.
Great tips there. Thank you for sharing that. And, always, like I said, I'm doing the series on the channels, and each week I do an episode. It's always like poor food combination is a big one that comes up again and again in Ayurveda as something that we really need to pay attention to. Can you talk a little bit? I have done a whole episode way back, I think episode number 26 on food poor combinations, but I think it's so important, especially here. If you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Sure. One is, let me start with honey, because that's everyone wants to lose weight. And what they are doing is they are drinking it in hot water. The first thing in the morning, they'll have hot water with honey. So that is again a wrong combination. So if you want to use honey, when the water cools down, you can put honey in that. So that's one. Then the second is milk and sour fruits. So a lot of people are having these milkshakes, or that is again to be avoided. That is a wrong combination. Milk and fish. So because either they both are very heavy in their quality, or they are opposite qualities, which causes a problem in our body. Either it is going to affect your Agni and then also leading to Ama. So these are a few of these combinations which are wrong. And then, of course, tailored to what is imbalanced for a Vata person. If your Vata is aggravated, then yes, you need to be a little more careful of what foods you're eating, not dry and not dry, light. Those qualities should not be there in the food. And if you are more on the kapha, your kapha is imbalanced. So again, to avoid the oily, heavy, fried, those kind of foods. And lastly, if your pitta is imbalanced, which in all the arthritis we have mentioned that there are these doshas which can get aggravated. So then here you will avoid spicy, sour, those kind of foods. So these are some of the foods which one can try to avoid as well as incorporate a few.
Right. And so this means like understanding your constitution, understanding as well your tendencies of imbalance, vikriti, and then making sure that you're tuning in and having awareness about those subtle signs of imbalance in your body, be it digestive problems, elimination problems, skin issues. All our body's talking to us all the time. So the more you can educate yourself, and Ayurveda is like our manual to life, the more we can educate ourselves on our own body. And what a fascinating study, right? To study yourself. The more we can manage our health throughout our lifetime. And as we said several times in this episode, is preventing this illness in the first place, because it's a lot easier to manage these subtle signs of imbalance along the way. And along with our digestion and living in tune with the circadian rhythms and, our dinacharya, our daily self-care practices, one thing we really need to cover all the time, I think, especially in our modern world, is stress. Stress is such a huge factor in these conditions as well, right, Simmi?
Yes, you rightly said, because during our treatment protocol, we do always consider that, because all these problems, because today we are talking about arthritis, so I'm going on bringing it back to arthritis. A majority of the people, they get really stressed out when they discover, first is just when the doctor diagnoses them with RA. RA becomes like a huge thing that now we have RA or osteoarthritis. We have to live with it forever. That causes your mind to become really either you become depressed or you get totally anxious. So one has to, in the treatment protocol also, one needs to take care of that, include herbs so that your mind gets calmed. You calm it down through herbs, or otherwise there are so many practices, just meditation, then pranayam, just doing the breath work, then yoga. All these are needed while managing these kind of health issues. And if we are talking about just old age, because that is also one part of our today's podcast, in old age, another thing that we notice is a lot of times people are left alone because either their one of the spouse is no more, or their children have gone away. So again, try, if from before, again, that's also kind of like prevention. So try to start building your community from now, so that in old age you have someone there, because to discuss your problems and your health issues, or just generally to keep your mind stress free, you would need that motivation and people around you.
100%. And we're understanding now more than ever, especially post-COVID, is the importance of community, and having that community is a very important part of our health, of managing our health, right? We see on these, these studies on blue zones, these areas in the world where people are living into their hundreds. And a big factor in their life is that community feeling and being connected.
Yes, I mean, the stress is also one, the nidana of these diseases. Sometimes they could be eating all the healthy, the best food according to their body constitution. Everything is going well, but the stress is so high, and we cannot just say, do not stress. That sentence does not do anyone good. Don't stress out. I mean, there's so much in life sometimes happens to us, which is not in our control. But what we can do is do a few things that from beginning, only at that time, if we start, it's going to be difficult. But again, if we start from young age itself, if we start doing these practices, we are able to handle the stress where, our sattva starts getting more stronger. where we can, in life, with all the ups and downs, we can be calm and controlled and take charge of of our lives if our sattva is good, and which we can build by all these meditations, pranayam, yoga, and of course the community.
Yeah, so true. And I think it's finding, what is it that relaxes you? Because stress is going to arise in life. We can't avoid it. But what is it that works for you? And what we want to build up is just a buffer to that stress, whether it is mindfulness practices or it's being out in nature. Different things work for different people, but it's so important to make that a priority in your life, that you find that place where you or that thing that really relaxes you, because that's essentially what we want. We want to be able to lean on something that produces that sattva, as you said, that balanced state when we're going through times of stress. And I think having something that we can lean on is so important, be it mindfulness, nature, religion, whatever it is for you. I think that's so important that we can have something to use as a crutch during those times.
Totally. It's so amazing, like what you said, that different people have different approaches to handle stress, or they get, some people get more attracted to a certain kind of thing to do, which again can be explained so beautifully through Ayurveda, because of our different doshas, which are more prominent in us, we get kind of attracted to doing certain things. Like a person, we may want to just do walking is our thing to relax ourselves. That is usually for a kapha person, I've seen. Mm-hmm. And for a pitta person, when there's a stress, they will they hit the gym.
Yeah.
It's so different for different people.
Yes, it's so true. And on that note, I would like to talk a little bit about vata, because I find that in talking with yogis who have a lot of vata imbalance, we know then there's an increase in the space and air elements. And that can really lead to this feeling of excess spaciousness and isolation, which of course leads to stress. Can you talk a little bit about that? And particularly for vata, and we're talking about, elderhood and the time of life when vata is more sensitive, the importance of managing vata, because otherwise that can lead to that sense of isolation.
Yes, true. Because vata, as you're saying, the space gets created.
Yeah.
It could be an internal space, or even just a space, as I mentioned, when a spouse goes away, your children goes away.
Yes.
The space gets created. That external space can be filled by, of course, if you're lucky enough to find more people, or you can do activities. You can start creating, you can start learning something, which as we are aging is going to be helpful to us. Maybe pick up a hobby like music, learning a language, which is going to help our brain as well. So that space, the external space, can be kind of filled with different activities, which of course helps us internally also, where our mind starts get relaxing. The space that's being created even in the Manovahad Shrota, that also starts getting balanced. And the other, of course, the bodily vata, if we are talking about the space being created there, that again, of course, the right, we have been saying that quite a bit about the vata pacifying diets and the lifestyle to slow it down. As we are aging, we are seeing these days people are not slowing down. Yeah. There was a reason why there were different, different ages had different kind of work that was kind of given to them. When we are in our younger age, when we are children, we have that kapha in us, so we are building. And in the pitta, we have that fiery energy. We can do whatever we can, we can do a lot of activity. But as we are entering the vata stage, we need to slow down. So that is another thing which these days people are not doing, which is again aggravating their vata for their old age. So slow down.
So true. That's so true. And our culture, especially in the West, is opposite to that, because our culture is push, 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 drive, drive. So you really have to work on, your own internal thought process. And as we age and that transition we go through at menopause and andropause is we're moving more then into a kind of mentorship role, that fire energy of the Pitta stage of life, right, which helped us build a career, maybe build a family, gave us that drive and that energy and that outward, it was the outward focus. And now we move more into that inward focus, and that fire is less, and we need to move more into a gentler way of life in order to sustain ourselves, right? Because if we keep pushing, we're going to literally burn out.
That's what's happening these days. And even when you're talking about burning out, even even in exercise, even in yoga, the regimen has become about pushing yourself, doing hot yoga, doing like crazy poses. The concept of yoga has been distorted now.
100%. Yeah. And that's why you really have to be very integrated in your own body and think about it from an Ayurvedic perspective, rather than trying to keep up with the Joneses or trying to, do what everyone else is doing in a yoga class, because it's what needs to be done is really understanding your constitution, your current imbalance, if you have one, your needs, and understanding what you need for your body rather than what everybody else is doing.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. So important to really take care of ourselves. And this, as we've been, talking about over and over again in this episode, it's really about what we do day in, day out, and setting up these simple foundational practices, which just become autopilot, right? These daily dinacharya self-care practices, living in tune with the circadian rhythms, put them on autopilot so that you're building up this really strong foundation of health and well-being. So when little stresses or imbalances arise, you can deal with them easily and come back into balance easily. So Simmi, great conversation. As we finish up here, is there anything else that you wanted to share with us, either about arthritis that we didn't get to cover, or about elderhood? Because I know that's a passion of yours, and I think it's wonderful to discuss this. And as we talked about, important to discuss it in our earlier years, because there's no avoiding it, folks. We're all going to get there, and we definitely want to make sure we get there in good health. So is there anything else that you wanted to add here?
I mean, all the topics are very vast, but going even for geriatrics health, because it's not just the asti, majja, mamsa, which is the neuromuscular skeletal system that gets affected. A lot of people have a lot of problems, different problems, again, depending on their whatever they have been, what kind of lifestyle they've led. But majority of it does start from the gut. And this being the Vata Vyadhi, the Vata stage. So there's a lot of Vata Vyadhi that happens. So in elderly population, you'll see a lot of people they complain about constipation, bloating, lack of hunger. So all those problems, again, are very easily fixed by changing the diet, lifestyle. And there's so many things that they can do at home to increase their digestion. One is, of course, also the probiotics they can take is the buttermilk. They can make it at home and drink that, which will help in their gut-related problems. So, and then there are smaller things that get ignored. Majority of the cases are, as initially I had mentioned about the incontinence, but also just in the mouth, all the sense organs, they start, again, there's a degeneration happening because that's the stage. So the eyes, their dryness, floaters, cataracts, again, all those have, Ayurveda has so much to offer.
Mm-hmm.
There are these netra tarpan. And then in mouth, the receding gums, the shaky teeth. In that also, there's, again, therapies like Gandusha, if we can start doing it from way before, so that our gums start strengthening so that we can lead a better old age.
And
so
that's oil pulling.
Yes, exactly.
Oil pulling. Yeah. Again, a simple, very simple practice that you can do day in, day out to really help strengthen your gums. And also it helps with any toxins in the gums, which can get into the bloodstream, right?
Yes.
Now you did mention buttermilk there.
Yes.
And so I know the next question from people is, how do we make buttermilk?
So one is, I can describe the recipe, or you can go to my website. It's given in the blog section. So that
excellent. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. that would be great, because buttermilk is something that's really used in Ayurveda, right, Simmi?
Yes, a lot. And it's amazing probiotic. It helps in your lot of IBS problems. And before that, I just want to kind of retrack. You had mentioned about, how we can, if we do our daily practices and all, it becomes our body starts getting tuned with it. Your body starts demanding it.
Yes.
So I have noticed that whenever I eat unhealthy, and we do, it's not as if always eating Ayurvedic, the correct food, but my body now demands buttermilk.
Oh, right.
And then after that, after eating like outside food, I live in Manhattan, so I end up eating at restaurants, and the food, it is full of white flour, bad oil, all those things.
Yeah.
The next day, my body just wants buttermilk. Yes. And after that, my gut feels at ease.
Great. So, okay, great. So we'll put that recipe in the show notes for people. But yeah, buttermilk is used a lot in Ayurveda, and really, as you said, healing for the gut. Well, Simmi, it's absolutely fantastic to talk to you. Before we finish up, let's tell people where they can find out more about you, your website, and if you could tell us the website address, and I'll put in the show notes also, and anything else you want to share with us in regards to your offerings.
So it's Sidayur, SIDHAYUR.com. And to the listeners, whoever is able to come, book an appointment, I will be able to give you 15% off. And then I have the Instagram and TikTok, or the same Sidayur is the handle.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Simmi, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. And thank you so much for sharing all this information today. It was so helpful. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me over.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Ayurvedic Doctor Simmi Chopra. Some great information here. And if you think that this episode will be helpful to family or friends, please share it with them so we can spread this Ayurvedic wisdom. Please check out the show notes for all the links mentioned in this episode. And if you're looking for some online support, you can check out my online services on my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. And don't forget, I have that 7-day Ayurvedic retreat at the Amrita Siddhi Ayurvedic Clinic in Ubud, Bali. That's December 4th to the 10th, 2023. There's limited places, so please check out the link in the show notes or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and go to the events tab. I hope you can join us there. If you haven't already subscribed or followed the podcast, please do so, and the new episodes will automatically download for you. And if you would like to rate and review the podcast, I would really appreciate that. You can find me on social media under Elements Healing and Wellbeing on Facebook, and the new Instagram page is Elements of Ayurveda Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take good care of yourself, be well, and bye for now. Slán go fóill.